about the nice games for the Game Boy Advance. My favorite Game Boy Advance game of 2002 is Super Mario Advance 3 Yoshi's Island. Right. This is a 2D platforming game where you play as Yoshi, you've got a little baby Mario on your back, and you're trying to keep him safe as you're going through all of these really well-defined and designed levels. It's a fantastic game.
How about Contra Advance?
Right.
For the Game Boy Advance. That's awesome. You get the old school Contra stuff. Again, I'm a big fan of these old arcade games being on little portable systems. Contra Advance, highly recommend picking it up.
Very cool. Metroid Fusion is now out for the Game Boy Advance, and Metroid fans are freaking out, and understandably so. This is also fantastic 2D scrolling platform action. Lots of shooting, lots of really cool new weapon power-ups, amazing level design. This is the 2D Metroid game that we've been waiting years and years for, and it delivers. There's also a sequel to Castlevania. It's Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance, and this is also a great addition to this series. They've beefed up the graphics big time. Lots of really nice rotation and scrolling effects. It's also got some RPG elements in the game.
We also saw some PlayStation 1 games make debuts on the Game Boy Advance.
Right.
Things like Tekken Advance.
Right, that was great.
For example, Tekken, they did a pretty darn good job of bringing Tekken to the Game Boy Advance, and also Crash Bandicoot.
I love the Crash Bandicoot game.
That was a great game.
Yeah, they've actually included some 3D worlds where Crash is running into the screen and he's being chased by a giant snowman. Great stuff there.
Rainbow Six Rogue Spear.
Great game.
Yet another great game. You could choose the members of your team. You had all these great missions to go on. You could switch between them at any time. You had to rescue hostages. You had snipers and fighters and all sorts of cool stuff.
One more for the nice list. I liked Bomberman Max 2, which was it split up onto 2 cartridges, a red and a blue one. There's lots of levels.
Collector's edition.
It has the adventure mode in there, but it also has some great multiplayer games. And there's some stuff that you can do with Bomberman Generation on the GameCube. You just have to connect your Game Boy Advance to your GameCube. So let's switch now over to the naughty games for the Game Boy Advance. What games did you think were not that great?
I'd like to start off with Planet of the Apes.
Oh, yes.
Not only did they destroy the movie, they came out with the new Planet of the Apes crap for the Game Boy Advance. They could have done so much with the Planet of the Apes license. They ruined the new movie. They ruined all the new games.
All right, I was really disappointed with Star X, which looked promising. It looked like it could have been like a Star Fox from the old Super Nintendo system, but the gameplay was so tired and the controls were horrible. It was just a lame pseudo attempt to go 3D on the Game Boy Advance, and it failed. The worst Game Boy Advance game for me was Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring from Vivendi Universal, based on the book, just like the Xbox version of the game, but it was just so slow. It took forever to walk from one screen to the next. You could play as all the different characters from the Fellowship, but you just didn't care. All right, we're going to switch over to hardware now. Let's talk about the nice hardware that we got to fool around with this year.
Spider-Man controller, loved it.
That was cool. The Spider Pad from Nokia, I like that as well. That was really cool.
Do you have to call it the Spider Pad?
That's the name of it. It's a game pad for the PlayStation 2.
That's a wacky name.
And the PlayStation.
They have this kind of cool 3D looking texture. You look at it and you're like, whoa, what's going on with my controller?
The only thing that's disappointing about it is that there's no Batman controller.
Ah, that's right. You got screwed again.
I did. I was very impressed by Nintendo's Wavebird for the GameCube. A true wireless controller. You could walk around your house no problem and still control your game.
It's a little heavier and you got to put some batteries in there, but
it's missing the rumble feature as well, but you know what? You give up a little bit of concession for the freedom.
I love the screen for the PlayStation 1.
Oh, the combo, the LCD combo.
Yeah, unbelievable screen. We took a look at a couple other screens that are on the market. The one that the Sony first party did is unbelievable. I mean, it's really, for the price especially. One of the things for the Xbox was the Controller S.
It is a great improvement over the original Xbox pack-in controller.
Move the buttons down, the black and white buttons so you could see them. The buttons are now in a cross formation as opposed to kind of weird and off-center. It's lighter, it fits in your hands. I love it.
Talking about a smaller controller, there was a solution for GameCube players that may be a little bit younger or may have smaller hands, and this was called the Microcon from Mad Catz. Great little controller. It's 20% smaller than the regular GameCube pack-in. and it has all the functionality, plus it has a macro button so you can put the little cheat moves in there if you like to do that.
Recommended by hobbits worldwide.
It's a really cool controller. My favorite piece of hardware this year has to be the network adapter for the PlayStation 2. I love this thing. I think it's going to offer tons and tons of new gameplay opportunities for PlayStation 2 owners out there. You have to get it. You're just going to hook it up to the back of your PlayStation 2 unit, and then you're playing online against thousands of other players. You got to get it. It's awesome. And now we're going to switch over to some of the hardware that we weren't that impressed with. These were pieces of hardware that were very, very naughty.
I'm going to start off with the Thrustmaster Fighting Arena controller.
Right.
This is something that you have to basically build.
Yes.
And it goes off your,
It's got sensors in it.
Sensors, and you're supposed to be able to play fighting games like this. The fun part though of that thing is trying to play like a driving game with it, because you're like, taking a right, taking a right.
We took a look at a bunch of lights for the Game Boy Advance, and I think the worst one that we looked at this year was the Trap Light from Pelican. It was supposed to sort of configure over top of the thing, and you move these flexible arms, and it's supposed to be really cool, but to change the batteries in the thing, you have to have a little screwdriver with you.
How about the Interact mobile monitor?
Oh, right.
We talked about the Sony monitor being so amazing for the PS1, and they did it great. And then Interact came out with one, and it was compare them, A to B them. You're like, bleh.
Yeah, it's really heavy, it's really bulky, and the image quality is not very good. The sound quality is okay. It's got some pretty good speakers, but that's not why you're buying a mobile monitor.
The thing I think I hated the most was the New Wave video game enhancer.
I'm right there with you.
This is a box, okay, that you're supposed to hook up your PlayStation 2 or any of your video game consoles to. It's supposed to enhance all your games, and it's a bunch of malarkey, because all it does, it's like basically taking the brightness on your TV, turning it all the way up, and taking the sharpness on your TV and turning it all the way up.
The enhancer is a turkey, no question about that.
Stick around. When we come back, we're talking about the biggest surprises of 2002, as well as the top 10 worst games of the year.